Listen up, recruits. Welcome to today's highly classified explainer. I'm your host, and for this session, I'll be stepping into the boots of a veteran agent to walk you through a critical threat assessment. We're looking at the evolution of presidential travel. Now, when you watch the commander-in-chief move around today, you're basically watching a rolling fortress, right? But let me tell you, it was absolutely not always like this. Digging back into the historical files, well, honestly, it's a miracle we didn't lose more of them. Our early presidents were incredibly vulnerable, practically walking targets compared to the total lockdown operations we run today. So grab your notebooks, get settled, because understanding where we started is literally the only way to grasp why we operate the way we do now. Alright, let's blitz through today's briefing overview. We've got 5 distinct operational phases to cover. First, the era of zero security. Second, how tragedy forced our hand and birthed executive protection. Third, armoring up the fleet. Fourth, the Dallas turning point and the end of open tops. And finally, the modern moving fortress. This is our roadmap of how the agency adapted from chaotic joyrides into hyper-secure logistical marvels. Section 1. The era of zero security. From horseback to iron horses. Honestly, as an agent reviewing these early files, the complete lack of protocol in the early days of the presidency is, well, it's terrifying. It genuinely induces a mild panic just thinking about it. We had zero specialized security, no advanced teams, no armored perimeters. The Secret Service didn't even exist yet to protect them. The president was just out there, totally exposed in the open. Take Thomas Jefferson, for instance. The man actually chose to ride solo on horseback to his own inauguration. No entourage, no carriage, just the president-elect and a horse heading down to the Capitol. Now, contrast that with a modern president who is constantly surrounded by decoy vehicles, armored SUVs, police motorcycles, heavily armed counter-assault teams, and these incredibly complex tactical formations. The contrast is staggering, isn't it? Jefferson's casual solo ride represents a level of vulnerability that is practically unimaginable to the modern agency. But the real nightmare for security started when transportation technology began rapidly outpacing our capabilities. In 1817, James Monroe takes the very first presidential steamboat ride. Then, by 1833, Andrew Jackson accelerates things dramatically, becoming the first sitting president to ride a train. Suddenly, a trip that used to take days by carriage took mere hours. The commanders-in-chief were instantly hooked on the speed. And by 1901, you've got William McKinley riding in a steam-powered automobile. The glaring problem here was that we had absolutely zero security protocols to match these new machines. Presidents were suddenly moving faster and farther than ever before, but they were doing it completely exposed. Moving on to Section 2. Tragedy forces our hand, the birth of executive protection. So we're transitioning now to the really harsh realities of the 19th and early 20th centuries, because all that fast, unprotected travel, it started to have dire consequences. Travel was no longer just a logistical headache. It was actively threatening the lives of the commanders-in-chief and their families. The hard truth is that the agency's protection protocols were literally built on tragedy. Back in 1853, President-elect Franklin Pierce was traveling with his family when their train car derailed. In the crash, Pierce's 11-year-old son was tragically killed. It's an absolutely heartbreaking event, but from a historical security standpoint, this horrific accident made it totally undeniable that presidential travel was incredibly risky. As a direct result, Pierce became the very first president to have a full-time bodyguard. It was a small step, sure, but it was the essential first building block of the executive security system we rely on today. The thing is, a single bodyguard does not equal an entire security detail, which left our presidents resorting to some pretty basic evasion tactics. Right before his 1861 inauguration, detectives actually uncovered a plot to stab Abraham Lincoln as he stepped off a train in Baltimore. To survive, Lincoln had to completely scrap his plans. He ended up quietly riding a different train in the dead of night, literally disguised in a big overcoat and a soft felt hat. We have no armored vehicles to shield him, no perimeter control whatsoever. Evasion and disguise. That was pretty much the entire playbook back then. So the crucial takeaway here is that travel was quite literally starting to kill our presidents. In 1901, William McKinley was assassinated in Buffalo right after arriving by train. A massive national tragedy that finally earned his successor, Teddy Roosevelt, full-time, two-agent Secret Service protection everywhere he went. But assassins weren't the only threat out there. In 1919, Woodrow Wilson launched a grueling 3-week cross-country train tour, ended up collapsing from exhaustion, and suffered a severe stroke. A few years later, in 1923, Warren G. Harding died suddenly in San Francisco while returning from a massive, exhausting voyage to Alaska. The sheer physical toll of traveling completely unprotected and unassisted was devastating. Section 3. Armoring up the fleet, taking security global. Now we're shifting the briefing to the World War II era. With global conflict raging, our threat profile absolutely exploded. We weren't just worried about lone gunmen at a train station anymore, we were looking at military-grade threats. The agency had to completely militarize the president's transit. The 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor set the Secret Service into absolute overdrive. For Franklin D. Roosevelt, everything had to be upgraded, and I mean instantly. His presidential limousine was immediately refitted with heavy armor, bulletproof glass, and run-flat tires. His custom Pullman railcar, rebuilt from the ground up with 3-inch thick armor plating and bulletproof windows. But the biggest operational leap of all happened in 1942, when FDR became the first sitting president to take to the skies, boarding the Dixie Clipper flying boat to travel all the way to Morocco. Our perimeter had officially left the ground. But, as you can imagine, as air travel became standard, we ran into brand new, terrifying risks. In 1953, under Dwight Eisenhower, one of the president's prop planes accidentally drifted into the exact same airspace as a commercial airliner. The problem, they both had incredibly similar call signs. Air traffic control was staring at their screens, looking at two planes, both identifying as 8610, leading to the terrifying realization, wait, one of you's the president and the other's a guy named Carl trying to get to Miami. It was a massive near miss that sent absolute chills down the spine of every security official involved. Now, what's really fascinating is that this terrifying mistake actually birthed the most famous aviation call sign in history. To ensure that a commercial flight could never, ever again be confused with the commander-in-chief, the military created a unique, completely unmistakable call sign, Air Force One. It was a massive operational shift, ensuring immediate, unquestioned priority in the skies. Section 4. The End of Open Tops. The Dallas Turning Point. Recruits, I need everyone to understand the gravity of this next phase. This represents the darkest day in the agency's modern history, a tragedy that forever changed our ground protocols. In November 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. He was riding in the X-100 Lincoln Continental, which at the time featured detachable roof panels specifically designed to give the crowds a better view of the president. That operational mindset, prioritizing visibility over safety, cost the president his life. Following the assassination, the Secret Service overhauled the vehicle entirely. The post-1963 limo features a permanent bulletproof glass top and heavy titanium armor, essentially turning it into a 5-ton rolling fortress. The era of open-air motorcades was permanently, undeniably over. We would never, ever again sacrifice a secure perimeter for visibility. With the ground feeling increasingly vulnerable, the sky quickly became the ultimate safe haven. Lyndon B. Johnson effectively decided he'd stick to the skies, where he couldn't be shot at, famously flying Air Force One directly into active combat zones in Vietnam. Richard Nixon took it a step further, evolving the aircraft from just a transport plane into a fully equipped flying command center. He was conducting heavy diplomacy in China and the Soviet Union without missing a beat. And by the time George H.W. Bush took office, the fleet was upgraded to the massive Boeing 747, literally a flying White House, packed with secure comms and, crucially, advanced anti-missile countermeasures. Section 5. The Modern Moving Fortress. Choreographing the Chaos. Fast forward to today, and protecting the commander-in-chief is an exercise in extreme, absolute measures. The sheer logistical footprint required to move the president safely is monumental. We leave absolutely nothing to chance. When we move the president on the ground today, we use highly complex, tactical formations. Two of the most critical are known as the box and the diamond. The box is our go-to for high-threat city environments. We basically wrap heavy counter-assault SUVs incredibly tight around the president's vehicle, physically sealing off every possible angle. The diamond formation, on the other hand, is used when we need pure speed. The lead and trail SUVs spread out into a diamond shape, which gives the motorcade the necessary room for lightning-fast lane changes and rapid evacuation if things go south. Every single inch of the route is meticulously planned and controlled. Let's look at the hardware for a second and see how this builds into absolute, total control. Under recent administrations, the presidential limo earned the nickname The Beast, and for good reason. It is basically a tank wearing a tuxedo. It boasts tear gas cannons, night vision systems, and doors that are literally as thick as the cabin door on a Boeing 757. We even keep a dedicated fridge on board stocked exclusively with the president's specific blood type, just in case. And for long road trips, the agency rolled out Ground Force One, these massively, heavily fortified buses that serve as mobile bunkers. But even with all this incredible armor, sometimes total absolute secrecy is the only real shield we have. Think back to 2003 when George W. Bush took a covert trip to Baghdad to surprise US troops. To slip through an active war zone completely undetected, Air Force One flew completely dark. I mean, every single exterior light was turned off. It was a wildly dangerous, cutting-edge maneuver, but it perfectly highlights the extreme lengths the agency will go to in order to secure a president in hostile territory. So we've gone from casual horseback rides with absolutely zero security all the way to flying totally dark over war zones in heavily armored jets. But threats never stop evolving, and neither does the way we travel. Get this, in 2019, the callsign Space Force One was officially reserved. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If we currently require 5-ton titanium rolling fortresses and heavily armed decoy fleets just to safely move the president down a standard city block, how exactly will the agency secure the commander-in-chief when they finally leave the atmosphere? Think about the pure logistical nightmare of off-planet executive protection. Until next time, recruits, stay vigilant out there.